notoriously known as nap time, okay? So I've got a buddy here that's going to make sure anybody who comes in late gets a sheet, and we're going to jump in here and get going. I am so happy to have the opportunity to share with you all today, and actually we're going to take the afternoons, and here's my goal. My goal in our afternoons is for every one of us in 5 specific areas to raise the level of our wisdom. Now, this is not going to be a Bible study per se. We will allude to Proverbs occasionally, and we'll allude to some other passages, but we're not going to do a Bible study per se. In fact, what I'd really like to do, and for those who might be listening, if you're going to listen in on a CD or something, you may be a little disappointed because you're not going to be able to listen to the parts where I let you interact with each other. Because instead of me coming in for an entire however long this is, what I'd really like to do is get just a little bit of interaction with you guys coaching each other and learning from each other. We can learn together on this. So here's a little bit of where we want to go. I want to walk you through, in these days, 5 specific areas. And I'm going to give you a chance to interact. We're going to be able to talk to each other. I could loan, if somebody needs a pen, I've got one extra one here that I could loan somebody. If I get it back. Anybody need a pen? Did you need one? Let's see how good I am. Not very good. Okay. Anybody else? I've got a couple more here. I've got a little supply in my, I was talking about this Bible cover this morning, and I was telling you the story behind it. This thing is incredible. Anybody else need one? Got a couple here. This is like a filing cabinet that I've got in my Bible here. Whoops, that's a highlighter. That one won't work. No, you need two. You need two. Anybody else? I got one more left. If I can get it back from you afterwards, it would help me out a little bit. I told you the story of this Bible that I had the opportunity to lead Fred to the Lord, and he comes into our one-on-one time, and he gives me this case. This case is better than a woman's purse. It is unreal. It's just got everything in it. I mean, when I travel a lot and speak a lot, I've got everything in here I'd ever need. I've got my lip gloss here. Let's see. Oh, I've got my inhaler. Sometimes if I get to speaking, I can sniff and get everything taken care of there. I've had a stent put in my heart, so I got my heart medicine in here. I've got that put in there. I've got my trusty Fisherman Friends cough drops. A lot of times when you speak, if you speak a lot, and I tend to speak quite a bit, it can really mess up your throat. And so I use Fisherman Friends. In fact, I always keep a stash in my pocket. I'll just tell you, if you watch me preach sometime and you see me go like this, it's just a Fisherman Friends cough drop, and it's like chewing tobacco. No, I didn't say that. You can put a pinch. Yeah, there you go. You can put a pinch right up there, and it'll last you the whole time. So the reason I had all those pens, Jim, was because it's inside my traveling filing case. In fact, I've got more stuff inside of this thing. Oh, there's the book I talked about this morning. It's inside there too. So I have anointing. I carry anointing oil. We carry a little bit of everything in here so we can get the job done. So that's my key. Okay, now here's what we're going to do. I'm going to work with you on 5 specific skill areas, okay? So my goal is that we're not only going to get better ourselves, and I'm looking forward to this because I need to grow in these areas, but we're going to help each other get better, and we're going to learn how to make the environments we live in get better. Here's the areas we're going to work on. Today we're going to work on wisdom. Wisdom when it comes to leadership. Okay, we're going to work on this whole thing of how can I be better as a leader. Then on Tuesday, we're going to go to work on team building. Maybe, who knows, the way I work, I may work on this a little bit today. But I learned some of the most amazing team building stuff last week in Alaska when I had the opportunity to visit Susan Butcher's thing. She's the Iditarod champion and how she trains dogs. Her way of training those dogs for the Iditarod is some of the best team building stuff you'll ever hear. So we're going to work on team building. Then we're going to work on navigating change. How do we work? How can we have wisdom as we navigate change? Change is tough. It is hard. Every one of us is going through change. Some of you are wondering, do I buy? Do I sell? Right now, Christy and I are at the point where both of our parents are in either assisted living facilities or some type of retirement place and going through that and what are we going to do and how do we become the best children. Just trying to help my dad learn that maybe his driving career needs to go to the next stage, considered retired, and that's kind of hard to do that. How do we help people navigate change? Churches, oh my goodness, are we going to have fun on Wednesday? Churches are going through change exponentially. Gordon MacDonald wrote a book entitled Who Stole My Church? And I know there's a lot of people who feel that way right now. I mean, this church is different. I mean, what's going on? We're singing songs I don't know. Dave, you're wearing a pair of blue jeans this afternoon. Can you be holy and wear jeans? I mean, how does this work? So we're going to work on that whole thing. We're going to coach each other on this thing of change. On Thursday, we're going to work on relationships. I'm a gigantic believer in the power of relationships. And so we're going to spend some time just working on how do we do this thing of building healthy relationships, because that is absolutely essential. And then Friday, we're going to close up. We're going to work on the one that's fun. Friday, we're not going to talk about any of us in this room. We're going to talk about everybody who didn't come. We're going to talk about how do you live with impossible people and difficult people. How can I get wisdom? And we all have these people in our life. We've got people that we would love to send on a one-way mission trip, right? Just send them anywhere just to get them away from us. And so we're going to go to work on that. Now, what I want to work with you today on is this whole thing of leadership, raising the level of leadership, raising your personal level. Now, right away, some of you are going to push back and say, I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader. That's not my thing. What you need to understand is you are a leader in some way, in some form. You might be a leader in your family. You might be a leader in your neighborhood. You are all supposed to be good leaders of yourself. We could talk about the art of self-leadership. How well are you doing leading yourself? Every one of us has this leadership thing in us. Now, there are some people who have a special gift of leadership. They have a special gift of leadership. In Romans 12:8 it says, if your gift is leading, let him lead. And there are some people who have a gift. Someone asked me this question. They say, are leaders made or are they born? Well, the last time I checked, every leader was born. Do you get it? They weren't hatched. But some people are born with a giftedness toward that. That's their natural propensity. Let's go down on your sheet, and I'll try to warn you when we're going to get to some of the stuff on your sheet, okay? You are not a leader because you hold a position. You're not a leader because you hold a leadership position. Sometimes people have the idea they're a leader because they got elected to something. Well, I'm head of the PTA. I'm head of this and that. Just because you are in a role does not mean you're a leader. In fact, there's a lot of people who are in roles who have never developed their level of leadership, and they shouldn't be in those roles. And there's nothing worse. It's like a trip on the Titanic. If I can refer to last night's storms, it's like a trip on the Titanic when you do that. You have to understand you're not a leader because you hold a position. You're not a leader because you speak with confidence and authority. Number two, you're not a leader because you speak with confidence and authority. Some people are very verbal. They have an ability to speak and articulate and say things. Your speaking ability does not necessarily make you a leader. In fact, can I tell you, in all the years that I've served at Napanee on our church board, one of the leaders we had was a guy who would only speak once or twice, maybe 3 times a year in a meeting. We called it the Glenn factor. Because whenever Glenn would speak, everybody in the room would turn their head. Because Glenn spoke so rarely that when he did speak, everyone listened and said, whoa, that felt like wisdom from on high. So don't get the idea that the people who speak the most are always the best leaders or the people who have the most amount of confidence. Have you ever met people that are confident? They're just confident. That's what we got to do. When you think, well, they must be a leader because of their high level of confidence. Not the case. There's a lot of confident people that have sunk the ship. So I want to work with you on leadership, and here's what I want to do. Can you find 2 or 3 people? If you could get besides somebody else where you could have a conversation, it would really help. Some of you may have to move a little bit because I want to give you these little 1-minute blocks and 1.5-minute blocks to talk to each other because you need to talk to each other, okay? So could you kind of position yourself right now in 2s, 3s, or just find somebody, introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm a leader. I want to be a leader. You look like a leader. Let's get ourselves positioned where we can have a little bit of interaction, okay? Where you can talk. Find somebody that you can talk to. And just introduce yourself. My name is, and I want you to introduce yourself to somebody, okay? Are you ready? Okay, here's the first question I want to ask you. I want to ask you this question. What are 3 qualities that you think are essential? You have been charged with heading a group to look for a leader. I don't know what this is a leader over, but it's a leader over XYZ. And you've been asked to find the leader. And you say there are 3 things, if this person is going to lead, a leader needs to have A, B, and C. Now, there are no right answers, no wrong answers on this, okay? I just want to give you, I'm going to turn you loose. I'm only going to give you 60 seconds on this one. I want you to identify for me the 3 essential qualities if someone's going to be a good leader. Are you ready? 60 seconds starts now, okay? Take your 60 seconds. 3 qualities. Your 30 seconds. The clock is ticking. Do 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 do. Okay, time is up. Time is up. 3 qualities. Let's just start hearing them. I'm going to start over here. 3 qualities. Give me one. What's that? Kindness. Has to have measure of kindness. Has to have that kindness. Over here. Has to be committed. If we're going to work, we want someone who's got a deep faith. Committed Christian. Over here, guys. Common sense. Oh my goodness. Whatever happened to common sense? That's interesting. That is good. You know, we take that one for granted, don't we? We assume people have common sense, but a lot of them don't. Back over here, guys. Honesty and integrity. That is good. Has to have honesty and integrity. Ladies, here. Did you get one? God-guided. Has to be in tune. Be able to listen to the Lord. Now, most of them are going to disappear, but I'm going to keep calling out. Do you have a fresh one? Listener. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That is good. Do you know listening is hard? Talking is easy. Listen, that is good. What do you have over here? Service, servant. Servant's heart. I love that. Servant's heart. Servant's heart. What do you have? What's that? Oh my, now you're getting into meddling. Ability to delegate. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. The ability to delegate, the ability to build other people up. It's not how much you can do, but how many people you can equip. That is so interesting. That's one of the things my dad said he always struggled with was delegation because he thought that to delegate meant he didn't have a servant's heart. And so if I ask you to do it, well, I should be doing everything, and you can't do that. You have to think multiply. How can I involve more people? That's good. Over here, guys. Attitude. Oh, my goodness, that one will preach. In the back, somebody have one in the back? Organizational skills. You know, it's interesting in organizational skills. A leader has to have organizational skills or be smart enough to find someone who does have organizational skills that can play on that team. That is good. Clear in the back. Anything? Did I hear vision? Or did I hear fishing? Vision. Vision, vision, vision. Those are great. Those are great. It's kind of interesting when you look for a leader, you have to decide what are those skills and what are they going to be. Now, you are a leader because, on your sheet, we're back to a blank now. You are a leader because you have influence. Influence. It's an old John Maxwellism that he used to teach all the time. Leadership can be summed up in one word: influence. Influence. When you say, let's go, others will get up and follow you. They will go with you. Now, let's go on to the sheet here and let's take a look. Let's just kind of develop this thing. Because every one of you is going to lead out of a different style. You're going to lead out of a different style. Now, this is something that I learned, actually, I think I probably learned this through Leadership Summit. I've been a part of so many things, it's hard for me to tell you where I picked up, what I picked up, how, and how much is mine originally. But I learned something very marginal, that there are different types of leaders. And you have to figure out which type you are. There are good directional leaders. There are managerial leaders. This isn't on your sheet. There are motivational leaders. There are visionary leaders. There are re-engineering leaders. Don't get caught thinking that I've got to be a particular person. Maybe in your church you've been asked to lead a group, or maybe with some people you've been asked to lead. There are different styles. You know, it's interesting. As I look around this room, no two of us that I can see, guys, are wearing the exact same shirt. I think they're all, ladies, it's kind of interesting. Ladies, it's kind of a big deal that y'all don't dress the same, isn't it? My wife has this skirt she wears, and one of the gals in the office has the exact same skirt and the pattern, and I guess you're not supposed to do that a lot or something. You know, ladies kind of like to have their own signature. Your leadership abilities are exactly that same way. Now, let's go down through the sheet you've got there, and here we go. I want to give you 13 marks of what a wise leader looks like. What would it be if you could raise the level of your leadership? Whether it's formal or informal. Now understand there's a big difference. Formal leadership is power that you have because of an office you hold. Informal leadership is what you do just by your mere presence. And by the way, can I tell you a secret? As a pastor, that some of the best leaders are the informal leaders. Bessie never held an office in our church. She was never voted to anything. But if you study our history of our church, one of the greatest leaders of our church was a lady whose only son was killed in an automobile accident, whose husband died just when he started retirement. And Bessie was a leader in our church because she had this informal ability. She became the mother of us all. In fact, there's a lot of us who are my age that we always look to Bessie as kind of our second mother. And she had this spiritual leadership. Now, we call that technically apostolic leadership, where someone just does something and people follow because they do it. Here we go. Number one, leaders see the big picture and know where they are asking people to go. That's the thing of vision. That's the thing of vision. Leaders have this vision of what can be. They don't always see what is, but they have a vision of what can be. Now, my favorite leadership book is the book of Nehemiah. You all know the story of Nehemiah. Nehemiah had this vision of something that could be. In fact, whenever I get somebody who comes to me and they've got an idea and they say, boy, I don't know what this is. I had a teacher come to me, lost a friend who died, and she said, I have this vision in honor of my teacher friend who died of seeing this memorial park take place and lots of athletics. And I said, you know what you need to do with your vision? You need to read the book of Nehemiah and study how to accomplish a vision. Nehemiah is the greatest textbook ever written because Nehemiah, by getting a hold of God, saw the big picture. He saw the big picture. And he knew the direction. He knew where he was going to ask people to go. Now, let's just talk for a second about Nehemiah. Let's pool our knowledge, okay? What was the big picture that Nehemiah saw? Does anybody remember from the story? He saw this big picture, had a vision of something. Jerusalem restored. The wall of Jerusalem rebuilt. He was hundreds of miles away, but he saw this vision of what could be. He saw this vision of what could be. I was talking to my brother Dennis the other day. Dennis served for a lot of years at Bethel as senior vice president. He's a history professor, and we were going through the history of Bethel College, and he loved to tell me the story. He'd tell me the story of Quentin Everest and Seth Rohr, and tell me the story of Mangus, and he'd tell me about these guys that had a vision. J.A. Hoffman, tell me the story of these guys that had a vision. They had a vision. And in fact, as he's writing now the history of Bethel College, he talked to me about how they almost bought the property where Ferris State is in Big Rapids. I think that's where Ferris State might be. And he told me about all these things, but there were people that had this vision. What would it be like if we had our own college that could train our own young people in a way? And the funny thing was, there was only 2 or 3 or 4 people that had that vision, and they saw that picture of what could be. Everything that you see was first in vision and then in reality. Do you think when they started Brown City Camp that they had a vision of what this thing would be? I think they had a vision of the activities that would take place and what could happen, but somebody had a big enough vision that got initially enough property to take care of this thing. So leaders can see something out there. They can see something. You know, one of the things I loved about Bessie, who I told you about in our church, is Bessie had a vision of what her church could be before anybody else had it. She had a vision of what could take place. She had a vision that someday this church could be thriving. Someday this church could be healthy. Someday this church could impact the community. Someday this church could give away its young people for the cause of evangelization of the world. So if you're going to be a wise leader, you have to work on this thing of vision. Now, what's the difference between, and I'm going to give you 60 seconds on this one. This is a hard one. What's the difference between Nehemiah's vision and a pipe dream? Now, you all know pipe dreams. They're just wild stuff that's never going to happen. We jokingly say some people have visions where they've just been smoking too many funny cigarettes or something. You know what I mean? It's just like, what in the world? This guy's way off. What's the difference between a God vision and a man's wild dream? Okay, now right away in your groups, go for it, okay? I want you to go for it. What's the difference? What's the difference between God's vision and a wild dream? Few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to reel you in. Boy, thanks for the music. This is impressive. Must feel my singing, Rick, must have been below the bar. That's got to be it. Thanks. Okay, what's the difference? What's the difference between capturing God's dream and some wild pipe dream? Just talk to me. What's the difference? Okay, right here. Now listen. Good stuff right here. Say it again, real loud, big voice. Prayed. He had a plan. And he approached the right people. Man, that's good. That's good stuff. It's too bad one guy gave the whole answer. Gave it right and perfect. He prayed. He had a plan. He got the right people. You are going to see in the book of Nehemiah, and I love to teach Nehemiah, you are going to see the steps it take. And he starts off with a broken heart, doesn't he? He weeps before the Lord, and he cries before the Lord. And then when he prays, he begins to get a plan because he doesn't have any resources. And then the plan begins to put the right people around him as he's going to do this thing. So it all begins with vision. It all begins with vision. So do you have an ability? How can you enhance your ability to see what can be? To see what can be and catch God's vision. Number 2, leaders are in it for the long haul and not the quick fix. Leaders are in it for the long haul. They are duration people. Leaders do not try to do this thing in a short window of time. You can do more in 2 years than you ever thought. You can do less in 2 weeks than you think. You can get more done in time. Now, a lot of the people I work with get frustrated with me because it's hard for you to believe it. They'll say, Dave, you're just so methodical. Let's go. And I say, we're going to go, but God's not called us always to be sprinters. We're marathon runners. When you pastor the same church for 36 years, you are a marathon runner. You're a marathon runner. And I'll tell you this when we deal with change. You can do change, you can help people to change if you're patient and you take time and you love them and you invest in them. They'll go with you on the journey. They'll change if you're willing to do that. But leaders never try to get in a hurry. They don't want to do it in a quick fix. They're interested in sustainability. Now, this is one of the big words that leaders begin to understand. Nehemiah knows if he goes from Babylon to Jerusalem and he builds this wall, he has got to be able to sustain the work over a long period of time. How can I sustain this? I bet every one of us have gone on at least 100 different diets, haven't we? We've tried them all. And the problem with diets is one word, and that's sustainability. How do we sustain it? How do we get a navigable lifestyle that we can keep on and on and on? And leaders view it for the long haul. Number 3, this is tricky. Leaders understand that there are higher standards for leaders than there are for followers. Leaders understand that there are higher standards for leaders than there are for followers. Now, gang, if I had a board here, I would draw this out for you. But I want to just do it, and I'll make a triangle right now like this. This is a hill I'll die on. This is really big. And if you're going to go with me on anything, you're going to understand this principle. That the higher you go in any leadership rise or in any organization, the less rights you have. You give up your rights and you pick up your responsibilities. Now, that's just exactly the opposite of how the world views leadership. Jesus teaches a type of leadership that the higher you go in leadership, you give up your rights. You pick up your responsibilities. I'll never forget before one of our building programs, we had a major parking problem. And I called the staff in, and I told the staff, now from here on out, y'all are going to park over at the gas station across the street. I made arrangements with them on Sundays so we can have their entire parking area, and we're going to go over there. That's not a fun thing to tell people when winter's coming, because my feeling is this. As staff, we need to learn what it is to surrender our rights and pick up our responsibilities. Now, some people have the idea that the higher you go, the more perks you get, the better it is, the more favors you get. Leaders understand that the higher I go, the more responsibilities I have. This may be controversial, but you'll get over it. One of the things I like to teach in the local church is that if you come to church once and you look like you're coming twice, we're going to consider you part of our church. You're going to be enrolled. And when you're enrolled in the church, you can actually be enrolled in our church and not even be a Christian. If you just breathe, we'll consider you a part. If you're in the hospital, we'll call on you. We'll visit you. We'll love you. And then you're going to make a move to the next step where you're going to come in and you're going to be a member of the church. And when you go into membership, we're going to start raising our expectations for you. And we're going to raise our expectations, like we're going to expect you to give. We're going to expect you to come. We're going to raise it. And then pretty soon, you're going to go into our leadership pool. And when you go into our leadership pool, we're going to have higher expectations for you. In our leadership covenant, we're going to tell you the number of Sundays that we expect you to be present in the course of a year. We're going to talk to you about the fact that we're going to ask that your giving be documented, that you are proven. Guys, this is the afternoon, so I'll say some things that will be offensive, okay? But you'll get over it by the time I speak next. I believe that no one has a right to serve in a church leadership position and make decisions on how money is spent if they're not giving. Do you have any right to make a decision? You're not giving, you're not generous? That just doesn't make sense to me. And so we're going to say in that pool, we're going to expect your giving to be at the optimum level. We're going to expect you to be present. You do not have the right at this level to go around and complain to people. You surrender your rights to openly air your grievances. You leave the room as one. And then we move up to where we have deacons. And deacons become spiritual elders in a sense in ours. Ultimately, you get up to be the pastoral team, and then pretty soon you get to be the senior pastor. Can you see what it's like? I've got to be there every time the doors are open. I've surrendered all my rights. I can't stand up and go to side. You see what it is? The higher you go in leadership, the less rights and the more responsibilities you have. Now, this is where a lot of people have the idea, well, I'm a leader. You know, I have it. I was in a church not long ago where there was an individual that thought because they were leadership that certain pew and that certain seat belonged to them because it was up toward the front and they wanted everybody to know, I'm in charge and I'm going to do this. No. It's not the heart of a servant leader. So leadership, we give up rights, we pick up responsibility, higher standards. Number 4, leaders are always willing to pay the price. Always willing to pay the price. Always willing to pay the price. There's a cost of being a leader. There's a cost of being a leader. Higher standards, number 3. Number 4, are you willing to pay the price? In Exodus 17:5, at the top of your sheet, it may have it there. Maybe on your sheet it does, on mine it does. Where Moses is told by God to walk ahead of the people. To walk ahead of the people, to go first. When I had the opportunity to meet Susan Butcher's daughter, if you've ever done an Alaskan cruise and you do the land part and you're up in Fairbanks. You're up in Fairbanks and they take the dogs out and they do the mushing thing. And she takes you through how they do this. It's really interesting. And then they have 2 dogs. They have 16 dogs that they take when they do the Iditarod. The 2 dogs that lead are called the lead dogs. And it's really interesting because there's a whole different mentality in the lead dogs than there are on the 2 dogs that they put closest to the sled. The 2 dogs that they put close to the sled may not be leaders, but they have this ability to pull. And they put 2 of the most faithful dogs right closest to the sled who are able to take orders and do it. But the lead dogs are the dogs that have this thing inside of them that they're willing to pay the price. They're not easily discouraged. Is the sky falling? There are some of you here who talked about attitude. Somebody mentioned attitude is the thing. If you're going to be a leader, you have to have an attitude that is always going to be able to be an overcomer's attitude. It's really interesting. Where Christy and I are staying here on the grounds, when the power went out this morning, we had a great view to watch leadership in action. Christy came to me and said, hey, look out the window. She said there's a confab going on. The powers of Brown City Camp are meeting right now to decide what to do. It was really interesting. There was no panic. There was this thing, everybody said, I'm going to step up. I watched it, and I didn't see anybody scurrying ridiculously. There was this methodical plan. Here's what we have to do. And I watched Walt McClavey, and I watched Jim Keller, and I watched a lot of these people here at the grounds operate. And sure, there might have been a moment of chaos or two, but I saw people that all of a sudden pitched in together, and I thought to myself, the lead dogs did a pretty good job. They did a pretty good job getting on top of the situation and taking care of it because they're willing to pay the price. Now, I want to give you a 60-second deal here right now, okay? I want to give you a 60-second deal, and I want to ask you a question. For you to be the leader of something, family, church, home, school, wherever you're at, what's the hardest price for you to pay? What do you say? For me, this price is just so hard. I don't like having to, and then fill in the blank. Because all of us have a point where the price gets a little tough, okay? And if you're going to be a leader, people aren't always going to agree with you. The hardest price to pay. What is the hard price for you to pay for you to be a leader? Are we ready to go? The music is going to start. There is no music. Here we go. What's the price that you have to pay? 3 higher standards. Let's go, let's put it up. Hey, these guys have gotten me sophisticated in the technology. Watch this. I can put it up on the screen right here. I'm impressed. Kurt is a leader. Okay, here we go. Are we ready? What for you personally? Now, let me go first, okay, to kind of help us out here. In leadership, the hardest price for me to pay is where I have to tick people off sometimes. And they get upset with me over a leadership decision I've had to make. I never get up in the morning and say, how can I have people not like me? And when I have to make decisions that I know are going to be personal and someone is not going to like me, that one makes it tough. And I've had to learn, don't try to get people to like you. Go for respect. People will respect you. People can dislike you, but at least they respect you. And so in my personality, I can be a people pleaser. And that one is hard for me. Anybody here? Raise your hand. You got one, you say, I'll share a hard thing for me in leadership. Right here. Family. Let's talk about this. Family. It's going to work. Here we go. Talk to me about that.
Well, God does come first, and the church and the needs of the church can sometimes conflict with the needs of your family. Time is a biggie.
Conviction is now setting in. I missed a ton of my son's birthdays when he was younger because it always coincided with an India trip. In fact, our daughter, who's now married, school teacher, she's in her 30s, saw her before we left to come, and I said, man, honey, I'm sorry, I'm going to miss your birthday Friday. She said, how many times have you been at Brown City during my birthday? And I thought, it's happened. And it is tough. How do I balance this thing? It's a high price. It's a very high price to pay. Somebody else, high price. Boy, you guys are singing my song. You're singing my song. Sleep, you give up sleep, you give up time. Did anybody want to put stress in here? Leadership is stress. It's just stress. You're going to stress out because there's so much coming at you. And you're going to have to give that up if you're going to do it. That's going to be big. Stress is going to be huge. Anybody else? What do you have to give up? Possessions. Do you know that's interesting? Tell me why you would say that. Oh, listen, this is good stuff. I hope you all can hear this. What he's saying is God's called me to a life of missions and a missionary, which means I'm going to have to give up stuff. And I'm not going to be able to accumulate. And what he's called me to, the price I'm going to have to pay is, do you know, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I have had the opportunity to lead a lot of large capital campaigns where we have to raise a lot of money. And I always teach that to lead means to go first. So therefore, if you're raising funds, that means you give first. And you have to lead in the amount of sacrifice. And I will confess, there have been a couple times that I swallowed hard on a sacrifice or two. Just tell you a quick story. Christy and I, back years ago, always wanted to have a hot tub. We wanted to own a hot tub. That was her big thing. Want to have a hot tub, have it outside, want to do this thing. And we were going into a capital campaign. And I was preaching on sacrifice. And clear as clear could be to both of us, the word came down. That hot tub is going in for that campaign. To this day, we don't have a hot tub. And it meant a sacrifice of giving up. It was another campaign. I had an autographed, authentic Michael Jordan, number 23, Chicago Bulls basketball jersey. I'm a huge Jordan fan. Was a huge Bulls fan. Sorry, you Piston people, you bad boys. But I was a big Bulls fan. And I'll never forget the night that I sensed it meant too much to me. And I had to give away my autographed number 23 Michael Jordan jersey. And I thought someday my grandson would have it. And I thought, man, this is going to be one of these family heirlooms. Just like, wouldn't you love to have a Babe Ruth jersey now? Well, what would it be like in 50 years for him to give to his grandson this Michael Jordan autographed jersey? It was worth a lot of money. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I will say this, it was a little tricky to peel it from me. And to say, Lord, are you sure? In fact, I actually thought, can I just give the money it's worth? and we'll just call it a deal, God. And the Lord said, no, I want the jersey. And then I had to debate. That's very insightful, you would say that. That's very, very insightful. Well, you got to give up. If you're going to do this thing, you've got to learn what it is to give up. I guess I could just put this time, sometime there's a financial. What do you think about Nehemiah? Do you think he had a financial? He had a job security issue. He did have security in his job, although he was the king's cupbearer. Some people believe that meant he was the guy that tasted it, and if he lived, it was a good day, then the king could drink it. I don't know. But he gave up security of his job. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on. I actually gave you number 5 already. Leaders are willing to relinquish rights. No, just a second. I got to make sure my numbers are right here. Number 4, leaders are willing to pay the price. Number 5, leaders are willing to relinquish rights and pick up responsibilities. We talked about that triangle. The higher you go, the less rights, more responsibilities. Number 6, leaders are willing to walk the lonely path. They're willing to walk the lonely path. Leaders have this ability to simply say, God, I'm going to walk this lonely path. I'm willing to go alone. There are going to be these dark nights. I talk about the loneliness of risk, the loneliness of being misunderstood, the loneliness of not being able to make this pad operate right, those types of lonelinesses. We talk about, Kurt, I'm not succeeding here. Nice try, though, buddy. When you know the story of Nehemiah, you understand that he had to walk through the dark night of the soul. If you're going to be a leader, you will at some point be misunderstood. In fact, there was a point when Nehemiah saw most of the people were going to begin to cut bait on him. They were saying, what, you're not going to make us do this wall. In fact, it's costing our families too much. It's costing us too much money. We can't do this thing anymore. And he was willing to stand alone. Leaders are not the type of people that have to have a lot of affirmation and support from everyone else. They're willing to stand alone and bring people with them as they're going to do it. Let's go on. Leaders are willing to do what is right and best, not what is easiest. They avoid the shortcuts. They are principled people. Leaders do not operate on raw pragmatism. Pragmatism says, well, if it works, it's going to be okay. Sometimes there are things that work that are fundamentally wrong. Sometimes there are things that might be effective, but it's just not the right way to do it. And so leaders are willing at that point to be able to do what's right and best, avoiding shortcuts. They have principles that they die upon and that they get upon. I want you to do a 60-second exercise right now. I may give you 90. I'm going to ask you in your group to get agreement on this, okay? Let's see if you can do this one. I want you, from anywhere, from history, from religion to politics to anywhere, I want you to identify one person that you would say, that is a superb leader. That person, great leader. Are you ready? Go to work on it. Here we go. 60 seconds. The clock starts now. Should I use my finger rather than this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
The other thing you can do, if you want to skinny the text,
See, it didn't go off.
I think it's just to push it. This now, you can control how fat so this is going to be, then you tap. It's going to be really skinny. Okay. And then this is your color. So you can have colors too.
Let me. Make that thicker.
It's going to be big. Yep, just tap down there. Yep.
Okay.
Try it.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Okay, I want your one name, and I may ask you why you have a right to say that person is a good, wise leader. Are you ready to go? Are you ready to go? Let's take clear in the back, as far back as we can go. That's it. You're looking back, but it's you. Give me a name. Abraham Lincoln. What's the one word you would say that made Abraham Lincoln, what was it about Abraham Lincoln that made him a great leader? Honesty, courage. Man, that guy had courage. Incredible. Right over here, plaid shirt. Ronald Reagan. What made Ronald Reagan a great leader? What made him a great leader? Yeah, said stuff and he meant it. He listened. You know, Reagan, do you know what I think made Reagan a great leader? He had guts. I mean, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I mean, you talk about guts. Called it out, courage. He did it. You got a leader for me?
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham. Oh, I love that. What made Billy Graham a great leader? What was one of the things that made him great?
Sustainability over the years.
Now, that's it. These guys got right here. Number one, sustainability. You never heard a bad thing. He kept his heart and his organization clean and pure. And I got to tell you what, pretty lonely in doing that these days, isn't he? Because that's just amazing. You guys got a leader for me?
My first one was George Washington.
George Washington. Oh, I loved it when I went to Mount Vernon to hear the story of George Washington. What do you think made George Washington a great leader?
He was determined.
Determination, just determination.
Unreal circumstances.
Yep, under very difficult circumstances, the roughness of the winter that comes in, he was willing to do that. It's interesting when you study leaders and you begin to see what made them that. Now, I'm assuming that you can take those positions, whether they're secular or spiritual, and you can take those and get those down. Now, let's go on to the next one. Number 8, leaders never ask others to do what they would not be willing to do themselves. Leaders never ask others to do what they would not be willing to do themselves. They wouldn't do it. Never forget years ago when my dad was getting ready to do a very menial project, a pastor friend of his said to him, "Why are you doing that? I never do stuff like that. I hire people to do that type of thing," like it was demeaning work. And I remember my dad looking at him saying, "Hey, I can do it. It's not that big of a deal. I would never ask anyone to do what I wouldn't be willing to do myself." And leaders have this thing where they're willing to get down and get dirty with other people. Number 9, leaders know priorities, not pettiness. Leaders know priorities, not pettiness. They know what the big picture is. They know what's most important. They know how to prioritize their responsibilities. Leaders know priorities, not pettiness. Not pettiness. Leaders know what the big issues are. The big issues. It's kind of interesting. I see this all the time in the church. I see there are people in the church who have a gift of leadership that someone will get stuck on a very unimportant issue. You know, like, is the service going to start at 9:15 or 9:30 and they're stuck forever? Leaders have a way of kind of rising above and say, "Hey, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal." In fact, could I empower some of you to be big picture people? And sometimes, even in our churches, we get stuck on the silliest of stuff. I remember one time, you ever hear me tell the story about our church? We were putting the shingles on one of the buildings, and we were relocating, and the men all wanted to have dark shingles because they didn't want to have, they didn't want the stain to show or anything. And the women on the decorating committee all wanted white shingles because they wanted it pure colonial, to have that white shingle look. And the two groups were just locked. Women over here, men over here, decorating over here, building over here. And finally, one of the guys spoke up and said, "Hey, it's not that big of a deal. I tell you what, let's do. We've decided that we're going to go white 3 months out of the year. January, February, and half of December." And then everybody kind of laughed and said, "You know what, whatever it is, what really matters is underneath those shingles that lives are being changed, the gospel is being preached, and the mission of Christ is going forward." Now, can I just challenge you guys, just as a pastor? these are tricky days in the life of churches today. People are getting all bent out of shape over all kinds of silly stuff. And it's really important for you to be able to say, let's focus on the big picture. I was listening to my mom and my dad. You could tell I'm like close to them. I reference them a lot when I speak. And Mom was saying something to Dad. She said, I wish they'd sing more hymns at church. I don't know the songs. And I thought, this is going to be interesting to see what Dad says to Mom. And Dad says to Mom, he says, have you ever let the words, though, of what they're singing, those are good words. He said, I can't pick up those tunes all the time. I don't understand it. But those words are really good. And he said, I think it's okay because the words are okay. I just wanted to cheer for my dad and say he got the big picture. He got the big picture. Now, when they were singing that a cappella number this morning, wasn't that beautiful? And I love the songs you love, How Firm a Foundation. I love getting out and singing some of those, but the big picture is we've got to see lives changed. Bessie, can I tell you another Bessie story? I went into Bessie's Sunday school class one time, and the church was really moving going forward in the early days, and it was a little bit tumultuous because we were going through too much change, and I thanked the people for their kindness and their graciousness with all the change. It was the senior adults. So I want to thank you guys. I said, I know these changes are hard for you. And I said, I just think you're pretty amazing that you've gone with us on the journey. And Bessie raised her hand and she said, Pastor, I want to tell you, we're excited about what's happening. You keep preaching. Let's keep seeing lives change, marriages mended, homes put together, young people called to service. I'm with you all the way. But then she smiled and said, but the second these results stop, I'm going to be all over you on what you're singing. And I said to her, good, it's a deal. It's a deal. Because what they simply said is we're going to be about the big picture. And as long as the big picture's okay, we're going to be in great shape. Let me pick up speed. Here we go. Leaders know what the big issues are. They make choices in knowing which battles to fight, which ones not to fight. Number 10, leaders are willing to clarify and confront doing what's right no matter what the cost. Okay, this may well burn up our time, and I'll give you the last ones in a hurry, but I got to talk to you about this one, gang. I've got to talk to you about this one. Jesus, help me not to overheat, okay? I believe the greatest sin in the church today is a violation of Matthew 18:15. This is the greatest sin in the church today. Leaders are willing to clarify and confront doing what's right no matter what the cost. Willing to clarify and confront. Now listen to me. Listen to me. The one thing we've never learned how to do right in the body of Christ is learning how to have tough, hard conversations with each other one-on-one. Leaders become leaders because they learn how to do conflict and confrontation and clarification biblically, not carnally or in a petty way. If I've got aught against you, sister, you know what the Bible says I need to do with that? The Bible says I go to her and him, and I say, I'm kind of ticked off at her. You know what she said or did? You know that's a bunch of nonsense. Not at all. If you have aught against your brother, where do you go? You go to your brother. Just between how many of you? 2 of you. I had a 3-hour meeting Friday morning with a brother that we were not doing well over an issue. Sent him a note and said, I think we need to have a conversation. We're not doing very well. We had to have a hard conversation. After 3 hours, we left on really good terms. I looked at him and said, let me tell you what I think I heard you say. He looked at me and said, let me tell you what I think I heard you say. We began to understand some things. We clarified some things. We were able to pray together. We were able to link arms together. We were able to have a hug together before we left. Why? Because we did it biblically, not carnally. Now, there's one thing we don't know how to do well in the Church of Jesus Christ, and that is to have hard, difficult conversations one-on-one. Ken Sande in his book Peacemakers talks about this. And this will separate leaders from followers quickly. Followers they'll store up stuff. And if I'm ticked at you, 3 of my other friends are going to know it. We have a venue church that we started in Shipshewana. If you're acquainted with Shipshewana, Amish, tourist, big place. And when we started the church, one of the guys that kind of helped us design the strategy came to me and said, you're going to have incredible problems when it comes to conflicts in this church. And I said, why? He said, because people of that genre don't know how to do conflicts well. And I said, what do you mean? He said, in that conflict, which is a peace-based conflict, if you understand the Amish Mennonite heritage, which my grandparents would have come out of a Mennonite heritage. If you're ticked at someone, you never go to them because you want to have peace. But it's a faux peace. It's a false peace because you go to everybody else. But you never go to the person. And it was really interesting. One of the hardest things we did was to sit down and say to these people, let me just tell you right now, we got a big old whistle, and we're going to blow that sucker. If we're going to throw the penalty flag on you. We're going to call a foul because you have to learn how to do conflict biblically and not carnally. Now, wise leaders learn how to have tough, hard conversations, and they are not fun. But let me tell you what, the result of them is absolutely incredible. The key thing is just between the two of you. Just between the two of you. In fact, one of the things I love to do with our leaders is to try to tell them, when someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm really upset at so-and-so, I'm really upset at this person, I'll go to them and say, have you talked to them yet? In essence, what I'm trying to tell them, don't talk to me until you first talk to them. And if you can't resolve it with them, then let's have a conversation. In fact, one of the things we'll say a lot is it sounds like you need to have a hard conversation. Bill Hybels does something where he talks about, it's a code, and I heard him do it, and I love it. I do the same thing now. He said when he goes to someone and he has a hard conversation with him, he always starts with this. He says, I need to go the last 10% with you. You know, most of the times in our conflicts with people, as leaders, we only go 90%, but we can't go that last bit because it's pretty painful. And that's why he says, I'm going to go the last 10%. In fact, I've just started joking and saying, I'm going to go the last 1%. Oh, this is going to be tough. Can I just give you a phrase I use that has helped me so much? In fact, I wish Christy were here because she'd say she's sick of it because she knows when I say it what I'm saying. But I have a phrase I use whenever I have to have these hard conversations. I go to someone and I say to them, and I'll say this every time, and I script myself lest I get fired up. Sometimes when you're mad at people, you can just kind of go off on them. I go to people and I say this phrase, I'm struggling, will you help me? I'll use that all the time. Feel free to use it. I'm struggling. I'm not doing well. Will you help me? In fact, amidst our team that's been together a long time, it's kind of become the way we do conflict with each other. We go to them and say, I'm struggling, will you help me? Will you help me? Matthew 18:15 simply says that you must learn what it is to do conflict biblically. Can I tell you something? Leadership will never go better than the ability that you have to manage and navigate conflict well. Now, some of you may have a short fuse. You may have a temper problem. You may even be sanctified and still have issues where things flare a little quick on you. You have to have diffuse valves put in there that you can help yourself. I've got a buddy of mine who every once in a while I'll see him get up and walk out of a meeting and I'll wonder, does he need a drink? What's he doing? He'll tell me later, no, something was happening inside of me that wasn't good. I need to step outside for a while and catch my breath. I was going to say something I was going to regret. Proverbs says there is more hope for a fool than a man who speaks in haste. I think that would tell us that we don't want to be worse than a fool, and we want to do this. We have to learn how to have hard, difficult conversations biblically and not carnally. Okay, let me kind of run you down here. It's time to break, and you got to get to your nap. So here we go. By the way, we say in that one, avoid unhealthy triangles. Triangles are just deadly, where you get three people, and this one goes to this one, and triangulation will strangulation for all your relationships. Number 11. Leaders are more interested in being respected than being liked. Leaders are more interested in being respected than being liked. This was a tough one for me personally. Because coming out of a background where, I want to have fun, interactive personality, you sometimes want to be liked. Never go for being liked as much as going for being respected. It will always pay off. Number 12, leaders are never interested in doing just enough to get by, but are always reaching for maximum effort. Can I tell you something that I learned the hard way? When you recruit people, if you recruit people trying to go to people and tell you this is the easiest thing you're ever going to do, there's nothing to this, you will not get a good response. You'll recruit low-level people. When you go to people and say, I got a challenge, but I think you're up for it. It's not the easiest thing you've ever done, but I think you can do it. Something inside people rises to the occasion. I was recruited to be a part of a service club one time. When they recruited me, they told me that, I said, man, my schedule's such that I may not be able to make all the meetings. They said, that's fine. You don't have to come if you don't want to. And I said, well, do I have to invite guests? No, you don't need to. I joined the club. It closed 6 months later. It never made it. Why? Because the standards were so low. Winners do not respond to how easy something is. They want to be challenged. And so leaders understand that, and they're not afraid to challenge. Number 13, the last one. Leaders know the power of relationships. The power of relationships. Gang, we're going to spend one whole day working on this one. This is big for me. This is big. If I could take you and work with you on developing your leadership. You may not be able to speak well. You can be a leader if you have relationships. You may not be able to be the best strategic planning. You may have organizational deficiencies. But I have to tell you, the power of leadership is found in relationships. Very simple. There's one person on this campgrounds right now who has the ability to come up, get inside of my pocket, and grab my money clip and take it without me grabbing it back real fast. There's only one person. It's my wife. We have a relationship. I trust her. I don't trust you, but I trust her. I'll give her everything I've got. That's the power of relationship. And relationship is built on trust. If I don't mention it to you when we work on relationships, you may not want to read it. I love it. It's The Speed of Trust. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His son actually wrote the book, and it's called The Speed of Trust. It is incredible. We'll work on it another day. We work on relationships. And I have to tell you, when you trust, incredible things happen. And when you don't trust, this thing will slip. So gang, wise leaders can grow and develop and become all that God wants them to be. We'll pick up tomorrow on the next one. Let me pray with you. Father, thanks for your love, your goodness. Wow, it's been kind of fun just to be able to talk together and to share. Lord, would you raise my level of leadership? I always underestimate my ability for low self-awareness. And sometimes I'm very low in my self-awareness. I don't know areas of my own weakness. But would you begin to show me and raise my level of leadership? And may everyone here, whether it's at home, family, friends, no matter where it is, may they become better because they're a leader that follows you. Thank you, Jesus. In your name we pray. And everybody said, Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys. Thank you. See you tomorrow. We'll have some fun tomorrow. What's that? Number 9. Here we go. Number 9. Leaders know priorities, not pettiness. Leaders, the other two. Number 9, the other two. Leaders know what the big issues are, and leaders make wise choices in choosing which battles they wish to fight. I'm sorry, I missed number 9. All you crossword puzzle people are dying. Leaders need to know what the big issues are, and they make wise choices in the battles they wish to fight. Okay? See you tomorrow, gang.